everyone. It's Nora LaTorre here with Nourished with Nora, where we help you nourish your future today. I'm so happy because our guest today is Dr. Michael Rich, who is one of my favorite people. He's an incredible doctor. He is an MD, MPH. He's the founder of the Digital Wellness Lab at Boston Children's Hospital, and he's an associate professor of pediatrics at Harvard, as well as the Harvard School of Public Health. Additionally, I'll add that he has personally changed my family's life. He changed the way that I parent. He changed my children's life, and he's, we talked about happy kids, happy parents, and I really believe that he set up my family for more success. And so I'm so excited to be here in conversation with you, Dr. Rich. Thank you.
I'm glad to be here with you. You're a hero of mine.
So let's just start with what got you into this?
Well, I spent my wicked youth in the film industry. I was a screenwriter and a documentary filmmaker, and actually had the honor and privilege of apprenticing to Akira Kurosawa in Japan as his assistant director for 2 years, and actually came back to the U.S. and helped prepare the international release version of it. And actually, even that short time in Hollywood, after having been at the knee of a master, made me say, I'm not sure I want to make films for the rest of my life. But I recognized how powerfully they engage young people in particular, but all of us. I realized they were an incredible force for changing hearts and minds. And that if we could harness them in ways that would help us all be healthier and smarter and more kind to each other, this would be a phenomenal thing. And so I had a midlife crisis and went to medical school. It was the only other thing I was interested in.
That is a career pivot from Hollywood and media to helping families navigate the media landscape.
Yeah.
And so this book is the Mediatrician's Guide. You're actually known as the Mediatrician. And I think you're the authority on helping families navigate media. And so thank you for making the pivot and learning for all of us and becoming a doctor in media, which is such a unique kind of combination. And I love the kind of positive parenting approach that you take, and it's super empowering. So I first heard you speak actually before the pandemic, and you shared something with me that blew my mind. And so I just want to talk a little bit about that. So you told the audience, and I was there, that when a child is looking at the TV screen or an iPhone or a tablet, they look kind of relaxed. They look engaged. And you said, while they may look calm or relaxed or slightly zoned out, what's actually happening is for a child looking at a screen, especially a very young child, that it's more like them seeing a saber-toothed tiger, that their amygdala is so triggered that they have so much sensory overload and imagery, etc., that it's overwhelming for them. And then that is why they're in that state. So could you share a little bit about that and the amygdala and then the prefrontal cortex in children and etc.? Can you break that down? And I hope I'm remembering that correctly, but maybe there's even more science on it, but it actually, then the guidance came out like as few screens as possible, under 2. And then we'll talk about what other guidance there is, but it really made me super intentional about what screens I, expose my kids to, or especially in that earliest part of development. So could you share a little bit about that phenomenon?
Yes, we were talking about the baby videos, the concept that you could put a baby in front of a video and that would make them smarter and they would be absorbing information. The sort of observation is they're watching it intently. Therefore, that it must be teaching them. They must be learning. What's actually happening with very young children is something called the orienting response, which is actually that they are drawn to anything novel that is either visual or audible in their environment, because it could be like a saber-toothed tiger or a fire. It's a survival reflex. It is a way of paying attention to that which could harm them. And so I think we can't ascribe more adult, more learning to that. What's really happening there is happening for a child at all times, is they are building their brain around their experience. And we need to understand that one of the reasons that human beings end up being as sophisticated as we are cognitively is that we are born with an embryonic brain, that Unlike other animals that have reflexes built in for clinging to mommy's fur or finding the nipple to feed oneself,
Mhm.
we don't give away any of those circuitry to those devices, those survival devices. What that means is we can build our brains in response to the environment we are
Mm.
navigating at all times. And that allows us to build our brains very, very quickly. And that's exactly what kids are doing at all times. Our brain triples in volume in the first 3 years of life. And what is happening is not that we're growing new neurons, new brain cells, but we are making connections between
Mm.
those brain cells. And those connections that are used time and again are reinforced. Those that are not used so much get pruned away to improve our signal to noise ratio. Unfortunately, a screen is a relatively weak set of stimuli compared to the stimuli of the
Mm.
natural world. And one of the reasons why we help parents understand that we should limit screens in the very early ages of a child is that they will get more from connecting with other human beings.
Mhm. And then you also spoke about not only limiting exposure, especially in those first 3 years, but also modeling and the role you called out every parent in the room. And that's something like I'm still working on, especially as a busy CEO. How do I put my screen down? How do I make sure that I have a healthy relationship with my screen? Because not only am I trying to protect my child and help nurture a healthy relationship for them in screens, but they're looking at me and looking at my modeling. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of that?
Well, first of all, one of the very subversive things I ask my adolescent patients when their parents are out of the room is, what could your parent do better?
Mm.
Almost invariably, the first thing out of their mouths is, pay more attention to me. My parent is focused on their phone or on their laptop or on the television or whatever. And so even those kids whose parents are saying, he never talks to me, I have no idea what she's thinking,
He's on his
they
phone.
want to be present with us. They want to have time with us. And so I think that not only are we modeling behavior for them, because they will hear 100% of what we do, even if they only listen to 1% of what we say.
I love that. They'll hear
And
what we
so,
do.
but also they crave us.
Yeah.
They really crave being
And
present
our
with
present.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even when they seem like they could care less.
Hmm. Yeah. And we need it. We need each other. We need that social interaction and that social
Mhm.
fabric and that time together. And they're looking for our cues and our eyesight and our and
Mhm.
everything. And so one thing, that I love about you as the leading mediatrician and this book, which I don't think parents of like that many people have heard about yet. Like I'm like, this is like just one of the best books out there because it is a guide and it is, you are one of the people that is working every single day with kids and with families. And so could you talk a little bit about your work with the Digital Wellness Lab and how you help families navigate media?
Absolutely. I think one of the occupational hazards of being a pediatrician is I'm optimistic. I love kids and I love what I learn from them every day. I think more important than the title of this book, The Mediatrician's Guide, is its subtitle, which is A Joyful Approach to Raising Healthy, Smart, Kind Kids in a Screen Saturated World. I think we have a zeitgeist right now that the screens are ruining a generation, that kids with smartphones, kids who have social media accounts are getting ruined by this pernicious force of social media and smartphones. And in actual fact, we have to recognize that these are not vectors of harm so much as they are powerful tools.
Mm.
And those powerful tools are being used usually in quite unguided ways because parents check out of their children's digital lives. They
Mhm.
figure their children know more about it than they do. They figure, well, let them have their way. But the problem is that this is a very sophisticated tool, which is a million times more powerful than the computer that landed Apollo 11 on the moon. And they have them in their pockets. They can reach anybody, anywhere, at any time. And that means a lot of really interesting things can be learned. A lot of interesting experiences can be had vicariously, but a lot of very dangerous information, content, and experiences can also be had online. And we need to be present in their digital lives the way we are present in their physical lives, and help them to balance the use of these powerful tools with their humanity.
I love that you're bringing a positive lens, because I think you're right that parents are very freaked out about social media, about cell phone use, tablet use, etc. And I think we're waking up to its impact on us, ourselves, and our relationships, and then also watching in our kids, and then watching it in society. And there's more moves to remove phones from schools, and then there's cyberbullying. And one thing that I really appreciate about your book too is just all the stories that you share that are just case studies, but then also lessons that then you read about an experience that an anonymous other family had, and then you can try to, protect your kid and guide your family. I love the breakdowns that you give in every single chapter. Okay, this is the problem, and here's what we can do about it, and here's real life examples of how you make it better, and here's one case that didn't go well, and here's one case that did go well. What are some top tips and tricks that you have for families, especially with young children? And then let's talk about middle school and high school around navigating social media specifically, and then cell phones.
Well, I think I would start with what I call the 5 M's of digital wellness, which you've already mentioned the first one of, which is model the behavior you want to see in your kids. The second one is mentor them as you introduce new devices or platforms or applications. One thing parents tell me is that they dread the internet talk more than they dread the sex talk, because rightly or wrongly, they think they know something about sex, but they know their kid knows more than they do about the internet. And they don't like not being the expert in the room. And I say, you don't have to be a teacher here. Be a mentor, because mentors learn as much from the mentee as the mentee learns from the mentor. Sit down with that smartphone when you decide that they are responsible enough to handle it. They can respect themselves and others in that space. Sit down next to them with curiosity, not with judgment, not with fear, not with guilt, and learn it with them. Yes, they will teach you things that you never conceived of that they can do on the phone, even though they've never seen one before, or they've never actually had one before. They've seen them. Learn from them and listen to them with respect for who they are and what they want. But you can also bring in your more mature prefrontal cortex, your more mature executive functions of impulse control and future thinking, so that when they mention, for example, how they can get anywhere, anytime, you can talk to them about hate sites. You can talk to them about pornography, not as something awful to be avoided, but as something that they will inevitably run across and that they will need to be prepared for, and also be prepared to share it with you and to help you parent them in that digital space. Which brings up M number 3, which is be able to monitor their digital lives. This is the one that parents push back against. Oh my God, I don't have the time to play video games or go on social media as much as she does. And the kids push back, of course. I want my privacy, even though to a 13-year-old, privacy means so mom and dad can't see. They don't think about the millions of other people out there who may not have the best of intentions. But what you do is not monitor them all the time, but be able to have their usernames and passwords. And here's the interesting thing. You don't have to monitor them. You just have to be able to, because that will change their behavior. The same way that drug testing in the workplace changes workers' behavior. What it also does is it extends that mentorship relationship where you are talking back and forth, where they are teaching you, you are learning from them, you are sharing things with them. I even say to parents, instead of screaming at your kid to stop playing Grand Theft Auto, sit down next to him and play it with him, because you're saying, I love you, I respect you, I want to understand what engages you here. And then when you finally figure out how to steal a car, you turn to them and say, okay, I figured it out. Yay. Now let's talk a little bit about why we want to practice this over and over and over again, right? Is this helping you be the kind of person you want to be? Now,
A little
that's the hard
GTA,
one.
okay, but yeah, let's talk through
Yeah,
it. And I think it's
that's
also
the
this is both of these, all of these M's so far are really creating an openness about it and an ongoing conversation, because it is an
right,
ongoing part of our lives.
right. And here's the cool thing. The next two M's are real goodies, things
Okay.
we get. The first one is make memories. We
Aw.
don't make memories of the video games we play. We don't make memories of the social media trolling or the doom scrolling or the TikToks we watch over and over again. We make memories of taking a walk in the woods with grandpa, or trying to make spaghetti sauce and spilling it all over the kitchen floor,
Yeah.
or
Throwing noodles on
spontaneous.
the wall to see if they're done.
You got
Or
it.
just feeling.
Absolutely. That's the stuff that sticks with us, like
Yeah.
the noodles stick to the wall. But the most important thing that comes from this is the final M, which is that in doing all these things, we achieve mastery of this very
Mm,
powerful tool. Mastery means using it mindfully, purposefully, and in a focused way to do what it does incredibly well, and turning it off when it's not the best tool for the job, and
mm.
spending time with each other in doing physical things like your daughter's sewing, like, all these things are the things that really stick with us and are what give us the richness of our lives. And I think one of the big problems about screen time, which everybody wants to know, you know, what is the screen time limit? What, like, there's some magic number at which,
Yeah.
it goes from okay to toxic. The screen time thing doesn't fit anymore. We can't even measure screen time the way we currently use it. We are in and out of screens all day long, and the
Right.
kids are even more seamlessly. The issue with screen time is not necessarily what you're doing on the screen, but what you're not doing because you're on a screen.
Mm.
Right? You are not living your life. I came out of the hospital a while ago after an exhausting day with a lot of really troubled young people,
Mm.
turned toward where my car was parked and saw a brilliant sunset, purples and pinks and
What?
golds. And all of that exhaustion, all of that sort of
Yeah.
sense of defeatedness sort of flowed out of me. And then I looked around the street and everyone was staring at their phones.
Mm.
Right?
Oh, I thought
And
it
they
would
missed it. They
oh,
missed it. And so I think we have to value ourselves, value our
yeah.
attention, and also value our minds more. One of the things I actually say is we have to bring back boredom.
I love that.
And the
And my
reason
husband and I
why,
say to each other, it's okay for the kid. It's good for the kid. It's not just okay for the kids to be bored. It's good for the kids to be bored. Like I love that flip, because I think we both are like, okay, we schedule that. They
right,
have a lot of activities, and like we're like, wait,
right.
no, create moments of boredom. I love that. It's
It's
good for
it's
kids to be
good
bored.
for us too.
Oh
It's
yeah,
good for
no,
us too.
I
I
could be
mean,
more bored more often.
yeah, right. I mean, we can't get into an elevator without staring at our phone, but think
Yeah.
about what's happening is that we are giving away our precious mind, our time, our attention to whatever drivel happens to be on that phone
Right. Right.
instead
We're
of
giving away our
valuing it.
moment, that moment, sunset or an interaction with a stranger or a moment to take a deep breath like that. We give away our moment to
Yes,
the screen.
absolutely. And, boredom is the crucible of creativity and
Hmm.
imagination, innovation, because it not only gives you that mind space, but that mind space is a little uncomfortable. So you fill it with new thoughts. You fill it with what ifs. You fill it with your imagination.
Like when you go
And
to Visionary Town, when you're like
yeah,
just wandering and wondering.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. Get bored. I'm seeing a title for your next More Bored Kids. Like that could be your next book, I think. Who knows?
Well, one of the things I actually say is instead of seeking killer apps, we should be developing our killer bees. And there
Hmm.
are 4 killer
Okay. Here.
bees.
I love these M's. I got the M's and now the B's. Okay.
Okay. The first one is be mindful in our
Yep.
use of screens and in our intentional non-use of screens. Be mindful of that walk in the woods or the spaghetti, right? And in the process of being mindful, be intentionally balanced between our screen and non-screen time. Rather than having screen time limits that, you cut off at a certain time, how about we have intentional non-screen time every day? Now,
Yeah.
there are obvious ones like in the bedroom at night, at the dinner table. But how about just intentional non-screen times when we're just taking a breath, as you say, as we are,
Mhm.
kind of being with each other?
Mhm.
So be mindful, be balanced, be bored for the
Ooh, I
very
like
reasons we say. Be intentionally bored.
my calendar so my whole team can see it too. Board time.
Right.
They're just like,
At
don't
4
mind
o'clock,
me,
at
team,
4
and
o'clock
everyone
will
have your
be.
board time. So I love it. I love it. I think it would be great for team creativity and breakthrough
Right.
ideas. I'm
You
adding
know,
it. I'm all about I put my personal health plan on my calendar. I do put boredom. I schedule Pilates. It's all on there. So I'm open book. I love. Okay, I'm adding it to next week. I'm finding
you're a
boredom.
CEO. You can call board meetings.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Can you be and is okay, but you can be bored together too. Like we're just gonna
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that's when like thumb wars happen or things like that.
And you know what? You walked right into the final B.
Yes.
Be present.
Oh, I love it.
Be present, not just for your kids who want your attention, but be present for each other and for yourself.
Yeah,
Be in the now.
I
And
love
these
it.
things are rejuvenating. They build our humanity. And that's why I talk about this as a joyful approach to raising healthy, smart, kind kids, because the joy is in their humanity, in
Mm.
seeing them grow up and seeing them surprise the hell out of you from time to time with the
Yeah.
amazing things that come out of their mouths.
Ugh, it's the best. It's the best. And like to encourage them to be present, but then to be present yourself as a parent for those moments so that you can slow down time and No.
Absolutely.
And my kids do say, Mom, I painted that for you. It's the sunset. Look, there's pink in it. Like we do soak up sunsets. And so, but how do you really be present so that you're available to them when they have those sweet, sweet moments too? So, and
Mhm.
I think we do health resets a lot. And I think I've been thinking about, we talk about digital detox, but I've been really thinking about my own personal digital reset and just like what systems do I have and habits do I have that I need to take a break from and reimagine a little bit. So these be mindful, be balanced, be bored, be present. I think that's I'm going to think about in my digital reset personally and as a leader those bees. So thank you. Love
The
it.
killer bees.
The killer bees, the killer bees. Also, yeah, go spend more time gardening. No, but also yes.
Absolutely.
I love it. So I also you do bring such inspiration and joy to the idea of screens. I feel like you do make them just less scary for me and you just always make it more navigable in general. So thank you for all of your work.
Well, I thank you for all of your work with nourishing the bodies of the children and the leaders of our future. So between the two of us, I'll take care of their minds, you take care of their bodies. We'll be
Great.
in good shape.
And they talk to each other too. So the brain and the body.
Absolutely.
So maybe we can talk about
Yes.
that a little bit. So you're joining Eat Real's new medical advisory board, where I'm the CEO. You and I have talked about addiction pathways and the connections between dopamine and screens and dopamine and food. If you just kind of share, like, why did you decide to join Eat Real's food? It's a food nonprofit, a real food nonprofit, and how you saw the connections between mental health in youth and screens and food. And I'll start with there. And then I have a few specific questions for you too.
Well, I think, first of all, our digital diet is very similar to our physical diet in the sense that we can eat too much of the wrong thing, or we can eat too much of the right thing. We can eat the wrong things, and we can eat not enough of the right thing, depending on how we nourish our bodies. I think we have to think about how we nourish our minds exactly the same way, in the sense of it's about not just the content, the quality of what we're putting in, but it's also the context. How do we consume these screens, et cetera? And in fact, there's a whole chapter in this book about body image, about nutrition. And I, at the Clinic for Interactive Media and Internet Disorders, which is the clinical arm really of the Digital Wellness Lab, I see kids who are on both ends of the spectrum. Those kids who are what we used to in the TV days called couch potatoes, who would sit in front of a screen snacking all day and are overweight. I also see the kids who get on social media and with upward social comparison feel like everybody is thinner, prettier, richer, happier than they are,
Yeah,
and get
reading those
into
stories in the book are so, especially as a woman and as a mom of a daughter, like I have a son too, but those are striking, the impact on that and body image in girls.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that we have to really approach these two issues hand in hand very much. And that's why I appreciate what you do. And I am honored to be asked to be on your board as a result. But it's also about approaching all these things with joy, not with fear, not with guilt, and not even thinking about the digital detox. One of the things that actually we have learned in the clinic over and over again is that actually the addiction analogy is inaccurate and actually counterproductive. And in the sense of it's counterproductive because in our society, we think of addiction and addicts as weak in character, as needing pity or punishment or both. And so we resist the idea that our children might be like that until they look for all the world like a junkie, staying up all night gaming or whatever. And then they show up on my doorstep clinically. But here's the interesting thing about addiction is that while it's not a medical term at all, is, we think of addiction as use of a pleasurable but unnecessary substance, whether it be nicotine or alcohol or cocaine, that is driven by physiologic drivers of wanting to feel good and wanting to, I'm sorry, should I say bless you? I'll go back.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I just had to say.
No, I didn't know if that ended up on the soundtrack. So
Oh yeah, no, we can start over.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That use of that pleasurable substance is driven by physiologic need to feel good and then not to feel bad in withdrawing from it. It continues despite negative consequences to our social lives, our academic lives, etc. And our therapeutic goal is abstinence. You don't need alcohol to survive. You don't need cocaine to survive. And it's causing more harm than good. Let's think now about interactive media online. I would argue that it is now a necessary resource. We need it to learn. We need it to learn, to communicate, to connect, to be part of our world right now.
Yeah.
And it is overuse of this necessary substance that is driven not by physiologic drivers, but by psychological drivers. What we have found is in the hundreds of kids we've seen in this clinic, the problem is not what the screen is doing to the kid. The problem is an underlying driver, whether it be attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, social anxiety, autism spectrum disorder, and depression. Those four, or one or more of those, have driven every case we've seen with the kids. And they are coming to the screens to soothe themselves, to distract themselves, to feel better. And when we identify those problems and treat them, the drive to the screen lessens, in some cases disappears altogether because they're meeting their needs in ways other than the screen. So I think that what we are seeing actually is that a better analogy than addiction is actually the most common eating disorder, binge eating disorder, which is use of food, a necessary resource, that it gets out of control because of psychological needs of wanting to feel better.
Self-medicating with screens or with food, etc.
Exactly. And that works a whole lot better in terms of actually helping these kids. And also, one of the big problems I have with the addiction thing is it's so much easier for the person who's struggling with it to say that thing, that alcohol or that video game did it to me, rather than what I did with that thing.
And I have to go a layer deeper and go into the underlying root causes of those in order to address that thing. It's easy to just blame the thing versus the root cause.
And that's often where the parents are when they bring the kids in, right?
Yeah, we're seeing screen use increase, and we are seeing happening and underlying in our youth population. And this is what Eat Real is all about, where we're seeing ADHD, fatty liver disease, chronic kidney disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, depression, those kind of underlying causes that you mentioned starting to soar in our children. And so I think that's also where, how do these things interact and these phenomenons, and then how do we help create a healthier base population? And, we think at Eat Real, we talk about, people are talking about the screens a lot. They're not talking about the food as much. And then how that is impacting development and neurodevelopment, and then usage of screen, et cetera. So we need healthy humans that then can use the technology and the tools in healthy ways and to optimize their futures and their existence and augment it instead of take away from it.
Right. The other thing I really want to emphasize is that while parenting can be guided and built on science, it really is more of an art than a science. And as with any art, we are imperfect at it. We are a work in progress and always will be. And I think that we can't be perfect parents. We should just forgive ourselves from the get-go, do the best we can, and remember to enjoy our kids. I think that's so, so important. Kids will all, when they hit their adolescent years, they will discover how imperfect we are. So don't even bother to try. Just be with them, help them, and keep your eyes and ears on them, because what they want more than anything else is to be seen and heard and to matter in the world, which is the huge draw to these interactive media in the first place. That something out there, someone out there is responding to me. That's why I'm making TikToks. That's why I'm playing Fortnite with strangers.
I'm looking for a response.
Absolutely.
You're just the hope doctor. I just want to say it. Like, you are the American hope doctor that we need right now. And I'm just so thankful for your work.
I don't want it to be out of naivete, though. I want it to be out of a real drive to find the best in ourselves and each other, and to acknowledge that the best is still not good enough, and frankly never will be good enough. And that's the real drive, is how can I be better? How can I be better for myself, for my children, for my world?
What are some activities that you, or like some of the B's, or like tools that you offer to families, so that as they're thinking about their child's day, not thinking about the screen time, but how many hours they have, how to really build those core memories and those presents? Like, what are some of your favorite kind of core memory sparks for families?
Well, first of all, as you might imagine, when the families come in to me, usually the parents are frustrated and the kids are conflicted, and there's a lot of tension. And the first thing I say to the parents with the kid there is, stop being the police and start supporting success. And then we talk about their day. We don't talk about limiting screen time. We talk about, let's think about the 24-hour day as an empty glass that we fill up with this many hours of sleep, recognizing how important sleep is, particularly to teenagers who are doing a lot of physical and neurological growth. And they need that sleep. And yet we have designed schedules in many ways that deny them an adequate amount of sleep, which is why they sleep in on weekends to make up for sleep deficit.
What, is there a range you encourage parents, like, if adults are 7 to 8 hours, what are you thinking for teenagers?
Well, I say at minimum 8 hours. Some kids need 10 or more hours of sleep, depending on how rapidly they're growing. What we have to recognize is that this is the second most rapid growth spurt in their life, immediately after birth. And one of the things that I tell the kids that they realize is, we only secrete growth hormone at night. We only grow at night. And you know why that is? We're not fighting gravity to get taller. So
is that the science behind it? Wait. Am I supposed to already know that? Was I supposed to learn that? Wait, what? I didn't. I told my son about that this morning, and I said, Nico, you look so much taller. And he said, Mom, I slept last night. And he knew it, innately. And then we talk about growing food and sleep and how sleep helps you grow and all of that. But wait, is it actually you grow laying down for that reason? Because you.
Of course.
Say it again. Just say it again.
You only grow when you're asleep, and your body only secretes growth hormone when you sleep. And that is incredibly efficient if you think about it, because growth is long bones getting longer, spinal vertebra getting taller. And if it has to fight gravity, You don't do it. In fact, right now, if you were to measure your height in the morning,
Yeah.
and before you go to bed, it will be less before you go to bed. That you actually settle during the day,
You get
it's
pulled
like
down to earth
geology.
a little bit more.
It's
Oh
it's
my goodness.
it's like geology, right?
I
But
can't wait to tell my kids this. They're going to want to remeasure themselves on our little growth chart, like in the morning. Like this is wow.
morning and evening, yeah, it's really quite interesting. But
So sleep paramount, and we talk in business. We talk about putting your big rocks in first, your jar, like, and then put the pebbles in first. So the majors. So one of the majors or the big rocks to fill your day with is sleep, and then but then what else? And yeah.
Well, I think and really figure out their day. Another really important thing is a sit down family meal every day without devices. That's a
I'm gonna
single.
put my phone in device jail. Like I got advertised a little locker, like a nicely designed, pretty looking locker, and I was like, and so I liked that idea. And when I was at dinner with some friends in Aspen, actually, and they collected everyone's devices, one of our friends, and he put them away off the table, and it was one of the best dinners I've had in so long because no one was getting buzzed. No one was getting like an alert on their phone and whatnot.
Right.
And they were only buzzing off of conversation and presence and storytelling and prompts. And it was definitely one of my favorite dinners. And I think zero screens like at the dinner table and at the breakfast table. My kids listen to the Yoto, but that's like her news briefing. So I'm gonna let her do that. But yeah. The Yoto doesn't count, does it? It's fine.
Well, I mean, I think it's always about, whether it's at dinners or not, it's always about what are the alternatives? What is a better alternative? What is the best alternative available to me right now?
Right.
We have to recognize that sit down meal, or meals in your case, a day together is the single most protective thing we can do, not just for their nutrition, but for their mental health. Practicing the original social media called conversation, right? And just being together.
Breaking you guys together, spending quality time together. Yeah.
Absolutely. Laughing and getting silly together. I recommend that highly. But to actually be mindful in thinking through their day of, what do I do between when I wake up and when I go to school? What do I do in school? And we should talk about phones in school too.
Yes, let's talk about it. Yeah.
Okay. We'll pause the day.
A balanced day.
We'll pause the day there and talk about school and phones. Okay. I have a hard time with the idea of banning phones from schools for two reasons. Number one is that anytime an American in particular hears the word ban, they say, well, that's okay for other people. That doesn't apply to me. It gives you something to push back against, something to say, I'm better than whatever. The other piece of it is, this is an incredibly powerful tool that unless we actively teach them to use it in mindful, directed, focused ways, they will figure it out on their own. And it'll be Lord of the Flies, as has happened with many kids. And this is the problem with parents and schools checking out from teaching them about how to use phones. And
AI and we want our kids to be adept at navigating technology.
Right. And a big part of that is be critical thinkers, be critical consumers and critical creators online, and to look at the school experience as, what is the goal here? And the two main pillars of school are the didactic learning of content matter, math, science, literature, all those things. Does that smartphone support that? Does it hinder that? Or is it neutral? The second goal of school is the social emotional learning that happens in school. This is the first time in their lives kids get to be individuals in a society of their own making. This is when they figure out, who do I like? Who do I not like? Why do I like them? Why do I not like them? How do I do projects together? How do I take on challenges? How do I pick myself up after failure, etc.? If they have in their pocket mom or dad saying, how'd you do on the math quiz? Do I need to talk to your teacher? What's going on in the kindergarten, in the playground or the lunchroom? They never get the opportunity to figure those things out for themselves. And I would argue that those skills are more important throughout their lifespan than the skills of arithmetic. If you think about it, that how to interact with humans, the so-called soft skills are the things that they will be using all their lives. So let's look at smartphones and say, what do they help? What do they hurt? And let's think about the prime directive, if you will, of school and see whether it supports it. So
also interesting having parents not text or communicate too much with it over cell phones with their kids, even though kids are texters, because like saving those conversations for the dinner table when they're processing and like about how their day was and highs and lows and roses and thorns, and then letting them navigate and digest it and learn how to reflect on think about how their class went themselves or how the playground was themselves. And it's always interesting. It was like, how do we raise really healthy adults, right? And so like, what skills are you giving them so that they can navigate adulthood without you? And so by constantly interrupting them and buzzing them with a question or a text, my kids don't have phones yet, but I can imagine I was speaking with my husband this morning about like bumper parenting. It does actually you want to be a bumper parent, but not and just be helping them, but not actually be clearing the path for them all times or zoning in and helicoptering with a text or an interruption and whatnot. So that's super interesting. Okay. So for screens and tools, that's thinking about just being very intentional about whether it's helping or hurting those two types of learning.
Absolutely. And then they come home from school. And the thing I tell the parents is the first thing you do, put some food in their mouths. Their blood sugar is low. Their energy is low. They're kind of feeling dragged down. Give them a snack and then get them outside or, get them some physical exercise, some strenuous physical exercise, because they've been sitting on their rear ends all day for the most part. And
that's nature, that's outdoor times, maybe some evening light, that sunset, that's like getting some fresh air. There's so many benefits, hearing some birds.
And their friends are out there, right? And so then think through the time between when they get done with that, you have the dinner, many kids have homework. Let's set aside homework time and then see what time is left for screens, allowing, of course, an hour of screen-free time before sleep time.
Right.
The reason I talk about sleep time, not about bedtime, is that so many kids have screens with them at bedtime. In fact, there is a whole school of media made for your kids to go to bed with, which is kind of ironic that we're going to have your kids stare into a blue light screen that suppresses their melatonin to help them get ready for sleep. But all that being said, an hour before sleep time is precious time for talking, for reading, for just, sitting in a bathtub and just, really reconnecting with your body, with each other, et cetera. And so I think that this is the way you approach the day mindfully. As you say, bumper parents or a structured plan, right? That doesn't mean it's locked in, it's set in stone, but it means it gives structure and the ability to expect and anticipate what's going to happen. It doesn't say, I'm keeping you from watching screens. It's also not saying I owe you X number of hours of screens each day, because that's the flip side of it is kids who have screen time limits feel that they are owed that then.
And sometimes he flips up and allows for, you're going on a road trip for part of that. Stare out the window and be bored. And for part of that, here's a screen and that and we're not rigid about only 35 minutes and 40 seconds a day, so like allowing some ease in that. And in your book, you talk about how when you say you can't have it or it's only for adults, kids want it more. And like we saw that with tobacco, we see that with alcohol. Like when it's too restricted, it's more desirable. So to not create this extra desire around the screens, that was super interesting in your book.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, we can see screen use as part of a rich and diverse menu of experiences that kids have, right? Because there are things you can do on screens you can't do with any other tool in our lives. So let's enjoy it, but let's also respect it as well as love it for what it can do for us.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, my daughter and my husband did an AI generated animation of her doing jujitsu. She just started jujitsu and she got her first stripe and she's like doing that and winning competitions. She's rocking it and losing and learning in those two, well, bronze. And then she's learning, I'm going to get gold next time, mom. And I did, and she did. And it just felt like I did because when she wins, I win, like, but they generated this image of her and then printed it and she colored it. And it was this like her as a superhero. And I thought, that's a very cool way to teach her cutting edge tech and give her some quick exposure, but then bring it back into the art room and have her drawing and coloring and tactile and all that. So that was like, I felt like a fun, creative example of that.
And it's using media and extending it into other kind of activities that enrich it and go forward. And that actually, I don't know why I made this connection, but we'll go with it. One of the things that made me realize, and I've realized over the years that I've taken care of kids, is I hate the term neurotypical. Neurotypical kids are, all that means is kids like me or kids like my kids are. And all it does is other kids. I genuinely think that we are all neurodiverse in so many different ways. Some people are good at jujitsu and can't hold a tune. Other people are musical geniuses and can't kick a soccer ball. That diversity actually enriches us and is something that we can all be expanded by as opposed to fear or hate. And one of the things that I'm often asked is, what age should I give my kid a smartphone?
Yeah.
And there are groups out there that talk about at certain ages when they're able to handle a smartphone. No kid is the same at the same age. Every 13-year-old is not alike. There are kids who are not ready for a smartphone at age 13. There are kids who are ready for one at age 10, and some that are not ready until they're 20.
And do we take into account when the parents are ready? I'm like, am I going to be ready at 13? I think I'll be ready when she's 16. Does that count too? Like,
absolutely.
Like, when can I be a really good mentor? Maybe not till she's 16 and doing it.
Well, yeah. First, you have to clean up your own act, right?
No, I know. No, Bobby Kettle, for sure. No, I'm working on it. I'm dedicated to it. I'm doing a reset. Yes, I know.
No, but I think that one of the things that I really, as well-intentioned as it is, I have problems with the idea of age-appropriate screen media.
Got it.
And the two reasons I have problems with it are, first, the age thing, which we've already talked about, that all kids of the same age are not the same.
Right.
But the word appropriate is a values-laden word. And what's appropriate in California or Massachusetts and what's appropriate in Maine or in Florida or in Texas are all different. They're all different. And let's move this away from the good and bad, the values-laden thing, into the what is healthy and what is less healthy. And so what we talk about instead of age appropriateness is what is developmentally optimal. That doesn't exclude the neurodivergent kids, as they are called, right? That doesn't exclude the kids who struggle with something because they have ADHD or they're on the autism spectrum. They have special skills of their own. And I think that we need to be really conscious of our own kids, and we have to have the confidence that we know our kids better than anyone on the face of the earth does. So instead of listening to somebody like me say at age 13 they can do it, listen to their own hearts and minds and say, you know what, my daughter needs a smartphone now for these reasons. My daughter has shown me that she's responsible, that she respects herself and others, and we're going to try it, and we'll try it together. We will mentor its introduction, but we'll stay in touch and we'll work through it. And you know what? If she stumbles, and there's a high likelihood she will, then we bring the guardrails in a little closer. We let her drive, but we bring the guardrails in. And as she shows she's able to handle it, you expand them a little bit, and not to restrict.
We're going to try this, and we're going to see how it impacts you and impacts our family, and then we'll, without being like, you said that I could do it. I'm like this ship has sailed. It's like, no, let's. I mean, my daughter's a very strong negotiator, so I'm like just, she's 6, but I'm already preparing, for
sure, sure, and it's all about what works best now and what they do. I often talk about it like walking a dog, right? The dog wants to run ahead. You give them plenty of leash, but when the dog gets in trouble, starts growling at another dog,
Or a car is coming. Yeah.
right, you shorten the leash a little bit, right? Not to restrict them, not to punish them or deny them something, but to keep them safe, to keep them healthy. And the same thing with kids. This is not about punishing them for being bad so much as by the rules or by what we are doing, the way we behave with them, we are helping them become the kind of humans they want to be and that we want to see them be.
I love it. One question, just while we're on this topic, I know I'm like, by the time my daughter is, in years and years, when she then has access to a smartphone or whatnot, the whole landscape will change. There'll be all new technology in those years. But one thing, I hear friends talk about and people talk about is that one reason parents are so nervous about what's going on right now with screens and kind of the abyss that happens in social media and the unknown is that you don't know what's out there. But then also it's that people feel relieved. And in my generation, I'm like an elder millennial, I'm a geriatric millennial. And so, I didn't have a smartphone and I didn't have a huge social media footprint. And I was relieved that I wasn't tweeting at 15 because 15-year-old Nora, now 39-year-old Nora would disagree with 15-year-old Nora. And I've become so many different versions of myself. And if there was a digital footprint, I've gone through so many phases and versions and that in any given time. And so that I get particularly, and I think I hear other people get nervous about not only the child's experience and how it impacts their development and then the exposure that they can have, but then their digital footprint. Can you talk a little bit about that or what you're thinking along those lines? It's just a worry that I hear a lot out there.
One of the things that I talk to parents about doing actively with their kids is to create online in this space. Why would I do that? Because it's to help them understand, both the parents and the kids understand that what they put online is going to go far, it's going to go fast, and it's going to be sticky. And the edgier it is, and kids tend toward the edgy because that's what gets people's attention.
It feeds the algorithm too. So then they get the feedback and the likes and the stars. Yep.
You got absolutely. Is that will be somewhere, and it'll end up in their college admissions folder or in their employment folder in the future. Now, kids can't think that far forward. They can't think past the weekend, let alone getting into college or getting a job. So what I actually advise them to do is not to put anything online that grandma wouldn't see, that they don't want grandma to see because she can't.
Like you kind of said, just have the monitoring on there. Pretend grandma is monitoring everything and that grandma will find everything. And then that's a good test.
And the grandma rule really works because, while parents don't have a problem pissing off their parents, they kind of are testing those limits all the time in one way or another. Grandma, they want to love and respect them unconditionally. And so I just say, don't put anything there grandma can't see because she can, right? So.
I love this grandma rule. I love that. Someone I know was just at TED and there was someone talking about building your brand at TED. I didn't go this year. I've gone every year. I love TED because you learn all these concepts and whatnot. They were talking about building your own brand. And it's interesting to think about that and starting to teach youth and mentor them on your digital identity and presence. And so, you do want to think about your kind of presence. If you are going to be a creator, and when you said be a creator with your child made me very nervous, but I could see why, because you're mentoring and you're learning together and you're having them be intentional about what is your online present? What types of things will you reshare? What types of things, even when you there's a footprint, who are you surrounding yourself with on the internet? And kind of what is your digital presence and helping kids think through their personal brand? What are the things that they care about? That I care about animals, whatever I care about, this sport that I'm doing or this hobby or the outdoor backpacking, whatever it is that the kids really care about, but just having them think through strategically, not just what wouldn't grandma want to see, but how do you show up and who are you and what are your values, helping your kid develop their digital values system as well.
But also not to be so self-conscious about it.
Okay, that's
that,
real. Yeah.
it's all about intentionally building your brand, right?
Right,
I
right,
mean,
right. We're not trying to create little marketers. Yeah.
yeah, what 7-year-old is building a brand,
No,
right?
no, no.
I
I just,
mean,
yeah.
no, you know what I'm saying though, is I think that I just think it's
But there
more
are
about,
those stars though. There are those like YouTube, but yes, 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 yes.
yeah, but
I
you
mean,
know
no,
what?
the number one thing
A
kids say
lot,
they want to be is an influencer right now in high school
right.
and in college.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
there,
absolutely.
so I do
It's
think
the,
kids are thinking about who am I on the internet, even though they're not like what brand, and we don't want to make kids too, we're not trying to be
right.
like, what I love about your messages. Don't freak out parents and don't freak out kids about media and digital. It's here and it's here to stay, and we need to live with it and move with it.
Right.
You were saying though about that 7-year-old, or don't you're giving guidance there.
Well, I want them to, I also want them to enjoy life. I want them
Yeah.
to giggle. I want them to be silly. I want them, um, not to worry about, whatever I'm doing, whether, 10 years from now, someone will come back to harm me. I think it's more about, really being present within oneself and being a 7-year-old when you're a 7-year-old,
Yeah.
not worrying about what, 39-year-old me is going to look back at
Right.
and say, oh my
Well, that's
God.
why we don't want her
I
on the
mean,
internet for a while, because I'm like, just be a kid. Like I want her to have
right,
this like just enjoy and live and move and yeah.
yeah. And interestingly, when I was actually in my pediatric training with, actually the pediatrician who was the first one who, really identified and developed a clinical response to child abuse, oddly enough, um, taught me that what every child needs is someone who's just crazy about them, just the way
Oh,
they are, right?
yeah.
Just the way they are. Yes, they will be silly, they will make mistakes, and we all make mistakes. And it's really not a matter of avoiding mistakes so much as it's a matter of healing those mistakes, not just correcting them, but healing them for both yourself and for the person who may have been harmed.
And creating a space where kids can
Be
can
kids.
and that where they can be kids, yeah, exactly, and where they can just feel like I'm loved for all the different parts of who I am, all the different
Right.
dynamic parts of me as a kid, and I am funny, and I can be serious, and I can, and just I love that, of just like really the importance of families adoring young ones for who they are.
Right. And I can play Grand Theft Auto even though it makes my mother's skin crawl. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
I was
and
actually good
I'm,
at GTA, so I don't know what that means about me, but I'm like, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's like,
right. But that's exactly what your children need to say, because here's the other thing that happens when we push back against it. It reiterates that forbidden fruit thing. It makes it that much more attractive. And one of the things that kids will tell me is, you know what? It gets boring after a while. All these games get boring because, they're built on algorithms that the kids figure out. And so, allow them to get over that sort of frisson of feeling, like I'm being bad, I'm being, outrageous,
yeah,
whatever, and understand, and value their time and attention that they're giving to this game, for example, and say, you know what, do I really want to spend my time doing this?
right. And give them other options and other opportunities and more. And say, I want to
Absolutely.
go on that walk with you, or do that project with you,
Right.
or we have
Be
that
bored
photo in
with
the
you.
other room. Yeah. And yeah, I love it. Well, so just I guess in closing, I want to hear a little bit like, what are you reading right now? What are you thinking about? What new concepts are you kind of exploring in this field?
Um, I'm doing a lot of work really thinking about this idea of us all being neurodiverse in fascinating and interesting ways. Um, in fact, one of the really interesting things that's coming out of the rapidly evolving AI situation is that young people on the autism spectrum actually are incredibly talented at AI coding, at really, because their minds work very similar to that. And I think that,
Mm,
um, we have to look at autism not as a disability, but as a different ability.
mhm.
And as, and autism is just one example of that.
Yeah.
I, I,
ADHD, oh, there are so many. Yeah. Or
Absolutely.
dyslexia. I
Well,
was hearing Richard Branson speak in New York about dyslexia and how it helped him think differently.
absolutely. And you know, I see ADHD. I take care of lots of kids with ADHD. I see it as a normal variant, not
Mm.
as an abnormality. And the reason for that is, think about us many generations ago as hunter gatherers. We crawled out of the cave in the morning in search of food and to not become someone else's food. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that level of distractibility, that level of hypervigilance is adaptive, and that allowed them to pass those skills down. Those, genetic and epigenetic traits were passed down generation after generation, until one generation gets told, sit down, shut up, and listen to that person in the front of the classroom. And they
Mm-hmm.
go, hey, look at the bird. Right. And
Where's
so
the danger? Yeah.
right. And so what was adaptive is now maladaptive, not
Mm.
because the kid is abnormal, but because we've changed the environment. And so I think that we have to take a step back and say, first of all, to look at the whole screen issue, not as vectors of help or harm, but as the environment in which these kids are growing up. It's like the air they breathe, and yes, we can work to make that air more healthy, but we also have to help them learn to breathe in healthy ways right now.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the worries I have is, with all the attention and energy that's being put to, let's get legislation, let's protect the poor innocent children, that's, whatever, litigate, and force people into change. These things take a lot of time, take a lot of resources, a lot of energy. And during this whole time, kids are growing up without any guidance, without any help. And we
Mm-hmm.
have to build in them the ability to thrive. And so I will say to parents who want software to protect their kids online, I say that software sits between your kids' ears.
Mm.
Build that protection in, help them to be digitally literate. And the way you do that is you give them digital tools, you teach them digital tools, you have them create on digital tools, you have them make mistakes on digital tools and correct them.
And be that mentor and be that guide.
Right. And enrich that software in their head.
Are there any meta things, if you had a magic wand, though, if you don't think it is, like totally going to screenless schools, and sometimes I, as a mom, I'm like, ooh, screenless schools sound in some ways like our phone lockers. That sounds really enticing to me, and I could see the real positivity around that. But I am curious, like, if you had a magic wand, what are some kind of national initiatives that you think could really help boost kids' resilience when it comes to being able to navigate media and screens?
Universal summer camp without electronics.
Whoa. Summers, give kids summers.
Right.
It's like an Operation Summers, and it's like you would have. Okay, tell me more about this. Yeah, so
Well,
like AmeriCorps for summer camp corps, and it's like
absolutely
all the college camp, all of America goes to camp, and it's also a childcare solution. I like this. Like, it's like, oh, like that, because there's a care gap for parents in the summer. I haven't had to do summer camp yet or figure out summer, but whoa, I'm about to, and it's daunting. So it's win-win for parents and students. I love.
What's really interesting about this is that summer camp, offers an opportunity for not only not having all those screens stimulating you, but having all these cool things and new people to do them with.
Right. And horseback riding and swimming in the lake,
and they're all a little dangerous, and would make mom nervous, which is kind of cool.
You're by yourself. Right? You're going.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Like, for example, even during the school year, for these kids who are heavy duty gamers, what else do? I urge them to take up parkour, in the city.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I say, my mom will never let me do that. I said, yeah, but your mom lets you, play Fortnite for 16 hours.
Yeah.
How about, right?
Or even laser tag is at least out. You're out there. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
I would rather a child break their leg than break their spirit. And I can fix a broken leg. I'm not sure I can always fix a broken spirit. And so I think that we have to really be conscious of how precious these years are in terms of shaping not just the kid who is now, but the adult who they will be in the future, not just for themselves, but for all around them. And I think we're at a difficult time in our world right now where it's very Machiavellian. It's all about surviving. It's all about beating the other guy. And it's not about a consciousness that we're all in this together. We all have different skills to bear. We also have different limitations that we can compensate for each other with, but it requires a level of trust and love for each other, for humanity writ large, to make that work. Is that naive? Maybe, but otherwise, what are we going to work for? Right? Here's my great fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
You look for my magic wand.
Yes.
I think the biggest structural problem with social media right now for kids is that they use it the way that the corporations do. They use it to market themselves to the world, to show that, the cool vacation I went on, or my dad's new sports car, or my hot new boyfriend. And other kids come to it seeking connection, wanting to, get, make friends and belong. And they see that everyone is happier than they are, is, more fulfilled than they are, is richer, is prettier, is thinner, whatever. Right. And
projecting. Everyone's projecting. There are all these projections of people, and they're in their best light. Yep.
Brand building. They're brand building, right?
There are brands of people. There are versions of people. There's like a public image of people that's not the full human image.
Absolutely. And so in the Facebook papers hearing, in Congress, Senator Blumenthal asked the Meta representative, can't you stop making Finstas? Now, Finstas are fake Instagram accounts that kids make that their parents don't have access to, but they're for their closest friends. And they're the ones where they talk about who they have a crush on and who upset them and all the various things that happen. I think Finstas are the future of good social media because they're authentic. They're not branding themselves
too. That's interesting. It's like you're actually your closest friends, and it's like deeper, as a platform for conversation and authenticity.
Absolutely. And so my fantasy is that someday there will be a kid in the equivalent of Ukraine and a kid in the equivalent of Russia at that time who are on social media with each other authentically, and their respective leaders say, that is the enemy, take up arms. And I'm sorry, did we lose you?
No. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So my fantasy is that there will be a kid in the equivalent of Ukraine and a kid in the equivalent of Russia that are authentically on social media with each other. Their respective leaders will say, take up arms against the enemy. And the kid will say, I don't know you as well as I know this kid. That is not my enemy. I think that if we can learn to use social media right, it can be an instrument of peace.
Yes, I love it. And of connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
And just being authentic with each other.
You are the doctor of hope, and I am so thankful to be in conversation with you.